Okay, I was about to do a very quick scene, thinking I didn't have too much time, and wanted to just get something done quickly, but I found this piece of full-size 8.5 by 11 glossy, and it just has one print on it, and I don't know, I think I can figure out what happened here. The impression here didn't print out right here, and I can see all these little crumbly, pebbly little textures on here, and that's from a disintegrating rubber stamp pad. It's probably, I inked it up, and then, that pad was practically turning to dust. Some of these pads I'm using are like 20 years old or more, like this one right here probably is as well. But I think that's what happened there, and one of the things that I'm really having fun doing these days is just, trying to make something from, some paper that's, I don't know, just basically scrap paper. And I thought we'd try something out with this. Now, I mean, that cloud like that, that's really not a big deal because you can just stamp right over the top of it, and it just fills in. That's what this cloud is really all about. If used correctly, it can just blend and fill in just about whatever you want. And I am going to try to make something out of this. What direction this goes in, I'm not really quite sure. But we have a lot of space. Okay, now I'm going to use the Moonlight Duos, okay? And I want to see where this leads to, okay? I'm going to be stamping out the images first and applying the inks right over the top of it. I don't even know if these impressions are going to still remain after I apply those inks on the top, but if they don't, so be it. But it will be an interesting journey, hopefully, and maybe it'll be something that I learn from. Okay, so anyways, just kind of doing this big, gigantic swirl of inks here. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's like a fantasy type of scenario or something like that. I thought I'd have some beams of light coming down here. I can do all kinds of. I could stamp a little scene in here, like there's some kind of encircling clouds. I can make the whole thing just some sort of a cloudscape, or we could do other types of sky figures in here. Maybe we'll do that. Let's make this into some sort of skyscape. Let's use some of this Milky Way stamp as well. Okay, so if you've never tuned into these videos before, there are some videos that are a lot more instructional, and some of them are more kind of exploratory, experimental types of things, where I'm just basically just turning on the camera and letting it roll. We'll see what I can come up with here. This one here, I don't work on 8.5 by 11 too often. I usually don't use, I never use hybrid inks over the top of dye-based ink imagery, so there'll be a lot of different things that I'll be kind of playing around with and testing for. Okay, now this is the Milky Way stamp right here. I'm going to overlap it with, overlap the clouds a little bit. I want the clouds kind of coming into it. This is a real blocky stamp, but if you use it properly, it blends in perfectly, as square as this is, with those clouds, okay? I'm overlapping about, the trick is here, you overlap about maybe about a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch or so, I would say. kind of center pressuring. Don't rock the stamp like that, you know, because you're going to get these big, huge, super defined outlines. Okay, now, what I did was I inked it up with a really dark blue. It's called Prussian blue. It's one of the darker blues out there on the market in terms of dye-based ink blue pads. There's a couple others that are really dark too that I really like. Okay, now the Milky Way has this little thing here. I mean, you can just stamp this wherever you want it to go, but I'm going to keep this kind of this streak here matched up with this one. So I'm going to go in here. I'm not going to match it up perfectly. What do? We overlap about 1/4 to 1/2 inch. Maybe it's 1/4 inch right here. And maybe it's almost like a full inch over here, so I'm changing the angle slightly, okay? So just as long as you overlap enough, you're going to be fine. What you don't want to do is you don't want to do under, you know, overlapping. That's not a word, but you don't want to leave a bunch of gaps in between all of your different imagery, okay? A lot of people are kind of scared to overlap things, and that's kind of understandable because we're not really used to doing that a lot of times. Okay, now see this right here? I don't know, I'm probably going in this like 2 inches over here. I mean, I could, you know, it wouldn't be a bad idea to do a little bit of masking here, but, you know, we're going to be covering this up with so much ink that it's not really going to matter. But yeah, in most types of stamping, we're not used to doing that type of overlapping because you're going to have a bunch of these outline images all kind of, you know, overlapping each other and kind of getting in the way of each other. So, but in my designs like this, I've designed everything to be used in a very easy format, okay? I mean, other stamps are easy to use too, but this one's just, it's a less fussy system, okay? I'm not having to stop and cut out masks and do a lot of careful alignment with things. I mean, you certainly could take the time if you wanted to, and, you know, really take the time to match things up perfectly, and you can use transparencies to see how different things would line up. I really don't bother doing that too much. I mean, there are some cases where, you know, something would come in handy, but, you know, by and large, you really don't have to do that. All right, now this is a huge textural statement here. But there's not a lot of focus here. In terms of things like lighting, directions, and kind of a focal point, it's just all kind of loud and busy because there's just all these kind of common textures everywhere. So what we'll do is we'll try to bring a little bit more focus, or a lot more focus, into it, and to, I don't know, just kind of make things look a little bit more kind of contained and maybe mellow. Not boring, though. We want it exciting, but we do want to bring some excitement into the mix. All right, now I haven't done this before. You know, I haven't like colored a dye-based scene like this before with hybrid inks. So I don't know what type of coverage we're going to be doing here. I'm going with the Moonlight Duo pads. This one it's a real light blue. It's, I don't know the names of these, and Bright Sky, okay? It's just a light blue. Okay, now going back to what I was talking about, kind of bringing focus into the pieces, it means that I'm going to be coloring some areas, okay? Well, I'll probably be coloring a lot of it. We're just going with the paper towel here. And I'm using this kind of circular motion. This never looks really great with my first color. Everything kind of sticks a little bit. But it's kind of in the I don't know, maybe at least the third or fourth layer of color, ink color, that things start to really come together for me with the hybrid inks, like the way that, I don't know, I've come to use them in a very, short span of time. I'm sure there's other ways to use these, like just stamping things out with them, but I really love kind of this kinesthetic, real kind of visceral type of characteristic that they can take on when really built up. They start to get really thick on the surface of the paper, and you can really kind of maneuver them and kind of move them around and layer upon layer of color over one another. And you can go back in with lighter tones even over the top of darker tones. Usually in dye-based inks you can't really do that. It doesn't really get, it might get a little richer, but it doesn't really get lighter. But this is one time you can actually do that a little bit. One of the things I'll do is I'll kind of keep some of these clouds light, okay? So it looks like, they're being illuminated in the scene. It's kind of fun. I feel inclined, normally I'm working on, most of the scenes that I do are quarter page. And I don't really work this big, but with the hybrid inks, it just seems to be kind of like half page, or half page scenes. Something larger than the quarter page just seems really conducive for this type of application. It gives me more space to kind of play around, and it's a real comfortable space. I don't know if I'd want to do like a gigantic 30 by 40 canvas with it, but if I did, I don't know, it could be fun. Alright, see what's kind of starting to happen here. Some of my stars I'm leaving, fairly light. This is where that big cloud was. That original cloud was the larger version of this cloud cumulus. But, they can merge in with one another, the large and the small one. I just happen to have the small one on my desk, so I didn't really bother going and getting the larger one. Plus, I was, what I had in mind was a kind of a hybrid ink scene tonight anyway, so I didn't even know if this would be kind of showing up at this point in time. It doesn't feel too different than dye-based inks when you put the initial layer down with hybrids. It's only through the, I don't know. I mean, it just depends how much ink you're applying, but for me it's about the fourth or fifth layer of a color, maybe. Or fourth or fifth color, I should say. So this paper towel works just fine for me. Sometimes, after you get things colored too, just like with dye-based inks for me, it's not just about applying color in some areas. See, where I've already added some down, I'm kind of adding more, because I'm kind of building up the ink a little bit, and I'm getting that pulp of the paper a little bit saturated with some moisture, so that the more inks that I apply on top of there, they end up being kind of more topical and less prone to kind of absorption into the surface of the paper. Okay, that makes sense. You're kind of super saturating the pulp of the paper. In a way, I don't know if it's really super saturated, but there's a high amount of it at least. Okay, so moving on to the next tone of blue. I suppose we could have done this first color too with dye-based inks. I don't know. I haven't really done very much experimentation at all. Okay, this is the next value of blue that I have. It's deep space blue. Okay. kind of applying it roughly in the same areas that I did with the previous color. Maybe I'll use a little bit less. I'm not sure. We'll see how it goes. See, it gets a little bit darker right there. And like I said, I do want to get, you know, a certain degree of buildup on here because I want to experiment with what these inks can do on the surface. Alright, I'm starting to get a little bit more of a feeling of that ink kind of sitting on the surface, because as I go in here, I can see it's kind of wiping off for me. It's not just kind of staining the paper surface and being absorbed. It's hard working on a kind of a large format here because I don't have room on my desk to kind of spin this around. You know how no matter how clean our desks get in our craft or stamping rooms, it always seems like the encroachment of media and whatever, and then we end up kind of stamping it, you know, with just the amount of space to fit our, you know, whatever size card that we're normally working on. I don't know, it seems to be the case with me. All right, kind of I'm starting to go for a little bit more of the kind of the hand motion right here too, kind of getting that little bit of a kind of a movement to the applications of ink, that is. So you kind of see that little swirl kind of being applied. I don't know if you can see that, but kind of like that, you know. And I think that'll, you know, potentially be kind of a nice kind of addition. Okay, now at this point in time, I guess I'm a little bit surprised at just how much ink, or just how much of the imagery I can still see fairly distinctly. I would have thought it would be kind of not quite as transparent in ink as these are, being that they're, you know, part pigment inks. Okay, this is a darker blue right here. Aurora teal, okay. Okay. if you liked finger painting as a 5-year-old, or whatever age you did it at, you'll enjoy this process here. It's kind of like going back to, going back to elementary school. Okay. All right, now let's kind of inject this with, I don't know, just a different flavor, visual flavor. Okay. Let's go into some pink. Okay, now I did use pink on that Milky Way, but it didn't read as pink because it was mixing with some of the blue, but it kind of gave me this magenta looking hue. So let's go in with the pink here. This one's Milky Way Magenta. Huh, perfect, right? In terms of a naming convention. Okay, this is what I do with my paper towels. I just kind of fold in half and just kind of like that, and you know, I've got my applicator like so. Okay. And I give that a pretty good inking. And now over here, I mean, you know, this is just kind of real, just amorphic types of applications. So I'm not too concerned over, you know, the textures on, you know, the paper towel and what they might look like when applied. So, I mean, it's, you know, that's not, you know, this is not some kind of a exact type of application, so you know, it can be really quite haphazard. I am going over a lot of things in here, but I still want to retain some of the lighter elements, I think. Let me try to go for some streaks, and I'll leave some areas just as is, you know, so we get a little bit of variation. I kind of changed from that kind of circular motion to this more streaky thing. I feel that this kind of motion right here, or this application, gives me a little bit more, I don't know, a certain type of spirit maybe to the piece. It's starting to look really, really ugly. Okay. And I recognize that, but to me it's kind of all part of the process. I have faith in kind of what certain techniques will kind of repair, but I want to keep doing this though, because I think that this kind of application here will pay dividends later on when I get to a little bit further along in the process. Okay, let's go for kind of a little bit of a different application here. Okay. Okay, fairly crazy looking. I was going to say interesting, but maybe crazier is a kind of a better description at this point in time. Okay, let's see here. Alright, I didn't know if I was going to use these purples, but let's see what else do I have here. Okay, there's this one. Here's a red. Let's give it a shot. Can't really see too much, but of course I have the other color on there still too. Looks okay. Man, that sure looks crazy. I feel like that's like the steering wheel or something in there. I feel the consistency is starting to kind of get to where I want it to be. It's interesting working so large though, because I have a feeling that the piece is just kind of, in general, it's drying. You know, because I'll work over here, then it's kind of setting up over here. So it's a little bit of a different dynamic than a couple of my initial kind of tests of the hybrids. Okay, let me see. Let me go to changing applicators here. I thought this one was getting a little bit too saturated. Yeah, so my applications, I couldn't really tell the difference between, you know, one application of color from the previous one that I was using, so it was probably getting a little bit too murky and blended in with one another. Okay, here's a kind of a darker violet right here. It's not really applying very much because I think this surface has become fairly super saturated, so my applications are a little bit more surface oriented, and also because I'm working on a glossy cardstock as opposed to a matte. I think the matte would have taken this a little bit more. Might, you know, the piece might look completely different on matte, but yeah, we'll just keep working it like this and see where it goes. Okay, get a little bit darker up here, I think. Okay, let's try some of this red here. Mars red. Let's go a little bit more isolated with this one. Maybe. I say that, but then it's like, if I like it, I'll kind of use more and more of it. We sure can see those clouds still. Like I said, I'm a little bit surprised at that. I don't know if I like that red so much there. Let's do a kind of a fusion of it. Okay, let's go back to this here, and we'll just go right back over the top of it. So it's like not just that red on top of something. We'll kind of sandwich it between a couple colors. So that's one of the things that's really nice about these inks. Is, you know, you can kind of layer colors right over the top of one another, and kind of subdue or, you know, complete eradication, kind of. Alright, this is what I've been building up to, black. Gosh, do I want to use that one right now, or do I want to go with the white? I want to use some of that white in there too. White pigment ink. Yeah, let's just go with the black for right now. as I've mentioned in other videos, that when I get to, you know, the darker colors, especially black, just because the, you know, the nature of the hue of it or whatever, it feels like I'm like shining shoes or something like that, putting a little bit of that, you know, shoe polish on something. It's so slippery, and I don't know, just kind of the viscosity of it, maybe. Okay. God, that is nuts. Hopefully it looks kind of dimensional and whatnot. Now, let's make this a little bit more textural. Not that that doesn't have a lot of texture in it already, but let's really try to kind of emphasize certain things and maybe de-emphasize other things, okay? Now, the Moonlight Duos come with a couple different versions. Well, actually, I tell you what, one of the things I like to do is I like to go back to certain other colors that I've already laid down that are now kind of buried under the surface. Let's go back to this really light blue again, and let's see what it looks like, kind of in some of these darker areas. Now this piece here in general, it's not terribly wet. Okay, as I say that, this is digging right into there, and it's lifting off some of those other layers of ink. But I kind of like that. See, it's kind of like, it's almost like it's bleeding into it. It feels like like alcohol ink or something like that. When you kind of build and build and build, it kind of starts puddling. I mean, it's not puddling on here, but that's kind of the look that it gives me. I like going back into these darker areas and just kind of lifting. I don't know if you can see that right here, but here's this color right here, and see, I've taken this right across there, and it's cut this blue swatch right through the black. You know, right up here, this got kind of uninteresting to me. So look at this. You know, that to me looks a little bit more interesting now. Right here, let's come into that. Yeah, see, it goes right in there. I don't know how, but it does, and that's where a lot of the fun of it is for me. Kind of doing things like that. Okay. It's where it gets a little bit, I don't know, just this whole technique I find kind of crazy. Because, like, when can you lift, you know, easily colors that you've already applied onto your paper? I guess these inks are a little bit more kind of surface oriented, so like I said, they don't after you get to a certain level, they don't absorb or stain the surface anymore. It's just, they're just laying on the surface, so you can kind of go into these areas and do these different types of effects. I'm not going to wipe into this and reveal just the white of the paper or something like that, but it is quite a bit lighter by doing something like that. Now see, this is a little bit more interesting to me as a kind of as a surface now. It's kind of, I don't know, it's tough to tell what's going on anywhere in there. It's going crazy. But it's a lot of fun, like I said. Okay, so let's go back to that pigment ink here. Now this is where, I'm usually doing this on, I've tried this on matte paper. I think this is going to look kind of nuts on here, but I'm just using the white pigment ink part of this, and yeah, see, this looks really blotchy, but let's go in and kind of, it feels like it's like smearing liquid paper over glossy cardstock or something. That's what this feels like. Well, let's see what we can do as far as maybe achieving, a little bit of some different textures. See that right there? It's not quite white because it's totally smearing, a lot of that paint that's underneath there, that I'm kind of wiping on, but I keep having to switch out to a new part of the paper towel here because, I am getting a lot of that white kind of polluted, and I'm smearing around the darker ink. So it's kind of hard to keep just pure white anywhere. Try to keep this general kind of a circular motion going here. Okay. Craziest piece I've ever done, I think. At least in terms of the background, I don't recall anything quite this nuts. I don't know where it's going, but I'm looking forward to, I don't know, kind of finding out. All right. go back into, let's go into this one again. It's kind of that light blue color. I like to, you know, go back and forth with these colors here. Work into the white, apply some more blue, go black, whatever, you know. So it's a real kind of circular process. You kind of add and subtract, layer. All right, let's try some of this black. The sleeves are coming up. Okay. Okay, let's see what we have here. Pretty crazy surface, that's for sure. All right, let me see. I need to change the exposure here of the camera. Okay. The overall lighting on this table got much darker because of the this piece right here. So this is kind of a little bit more of a true indication of the how dark this piece is right at this point in time. All right, so that is kind of a swirly looking crazy mess right now. And let's go in and kind of add a little bit of definition and fun to the piece. Okay, I have my toothbrush here, my bleed-proof white. If there was ever a scene where the bleed-proof white will come in handy, it's this one. Not that it doesn't look good in, you know, I don't know, various applications, but okay, I'm kind of reconstituting this. I really want a lot of moisture in this one because the piece is so large, and I'm not going to mind. I'll actually like it if I get, you know, some kind of larger splatter dots on this piece right here. Just for some variation, it'll save me a lot of, look at my fingers right here. It'll save me a lot of time with doing things individually with something like a paint pen or a gel pen. All right, so with that being said, this is rather thin. I usually make it a little bit thicker, but I will remove a lot of it because I don't want to get like a, you know, a dime-sized blob of paint down there. But we'll go with this right here. Try to get some good textures running in here. Maybe I'll have kind of more of these stars kind of in the middle here, more of these splatters down here, kind of towards the middle, and then as it moves out, it'll kind of dissipate a little bit. kind of higher concentration from the maybe the source of the stars right in there. Okay. I feel like I'm working on a painting. All right. Let's take a look at that splatter painting here. It's like an abstract piece, huh? Boy, that is so nuts. Okay. All right, I'm going to have to get some big imagery in here for this one. And I'll go for some trees. I'll go for this kind of look that I've done so many times before with these trees and some larger pine trees and stuff like that. And we'll kind of have this maybe as the focal point of the piece, or as the kind of the vanishing point right here, that star right there, since it is kind of the dominant visual in terms of lighting in this scene right now. But let me see, I might need to pick up, oh, let's see, I have some of these things on my table still, so. All right, let's just go with the hybrid inks. Let's do a couple different ways. Let's use some of the Versafine black, and then I'll try some of the hybrid black ink. I'm not sure which one will show up the best, but this will be a test piece for that. All right, Versafine is just a straight pigment ink. It does very detailed impressions. All right. I'm going to stand up for this one because I am stamping all these little dots down here are little like raised, dried beads of paint, and those ones dry really fast. Bleed-proof white is it's kind of a chalky watercolor paint, so it really dries quite fast. That's why you have to reconstitute it in the bottle quite often after you use it. Okay, now see right there, there's a cluster of those little dots there, so it was a little bit raised, so it didn't stamp right there. But that's all right. I'll stamp something in front of it. Okay, so each one of these trees, I'm going to aim, I think I just blurred this one a little bit. I'm going to aim towards that star. All right, this Versafine's looking pretty good so far. Put another one right, maybe down right here. This is the Spruce Tree Lg. It's a, it's a fairly tall image as far as stamps go. And okay, I have something on here because it didn't stamp again right there. No problem. I'll just go in here like that and just cover it up like so. I'll do the same thing right here. I was going to put just something other in front of it, but we'll just go like this. All right, I think I have something on this one. I just wipe it off. Where is it? Something like right there. You can't see it a lot of times because the ink is so thick. You just don't notice it sitting on the rubber. Okay, go around like this. Okay. And I just smeared these two stamps right here. I don't know if you noticed that. They're not real clear. This ink over here is real thick and it's like a paint. And this is real thick, so when I was pressing down, it like jostled. No matter though, it'll be fine. I say that because I can put something else very crisp next to it, another impression, and as long as there's something fairly crisp next to it, you know, we're good. Okay, let's see. All right. Okay, those are good. I think with the spruce. Let me see if I have my other kind of thinner pine tree over here somewhere. I might have to go get it. I might have put it away already. Okay, so let's go with a nice tall leafless pine. Okay. This one's really good for kind of a textural contrast with the full pine one, but it also kind of represents kind of age and just nature, you know, things dying out. You know, you go into a forest, you know, if it's a healthy one, you'll see some things in decay, plus things that are kind of brand new, some different shoots or whatever, you know, saplings. All right, let's go with this one right in here. Okay, I'll go fairly tall with this one. All right, I'm right in that zone right there. That was really wet, so don't smear this one, I'm saying in my head. Okay. Okay, gonna have these three working right now. Always kind of pointing towards the vanishing point, single point perspective. In this case. Sometimes the tallest trees are the ones that are, you know, the most prone to getting zapped by lightning and whatnot. Alright, I might be going a little bit overboard with this leafless one, but I'll balance that off again with a few more trees, different types of trees. Okay. Okay, here's another kind of a different type of pine when you're out in the forests. At least the ones that I go hiking in, you see all kinds of different types of pines. Trying to think of some of them. Ponderosa pine, is that one of them that I see? Local mountains. There's like pinyon pines. trying to think of that. I used to know these. I used to be able to identify, but I think I've even forgotten the names. Anyways, there's a bunch of them. Well, maybe not a bunch of them, at least maybe a half dozen or so. Ponderosa pine, I think. Okay. See, it's kind of giving a different, kind of more varied, rich look, don't you think? By having the different types kind of all kind of blended in with one another and, you know, kind of harmonizing different shapes, different textures. Okay. I'm kind of grouping and trying to make it not look so absolutely symmetrical in terms of my placement. In other words, I don't just go with the spruce, leafless, you know, pine, you know, you know. I try to kind of mix it up a little bit in terms of, and also kind of how close I stamp it, you know, with one another. And some of these I'm just kind of actually overlapping the other tree. I don't want to do that too much because I like the silhouette of all the trees and showing the shape. I don't want it to get too murky from a visual standpoint either, but we do want to have it look, you know, fairly natural. All right, so I didn't move, you know, over to the hybrid, that black. This one's the Versafine's looking pretty good right now in terms of the shapes. And also the value of it. It's very, very dark, so I'm going to stick with that for now. When I've done this before, sometimes the pigment inks kind of start soaking through a little bit and revealing themselves over the surface, but I don't know if that'll be the case here. In other words, the white pigment ink underneath starts kind of, as the black ink dries, it, you know, I start to be able to see it through the black. All right, so that is pretty crazy surface there, don't you think? Let's get, man, this is nuts. Oh my god, look at that. I was going to use the backside, but this is completely soaked through over here too. Okay, let's see. This is one of the larger kind of pieces I've done in this kind of spirit of kind of the night sky type of kind of lie on your back and look at the stars type of pieces. Definitely haven't done that kind of that, you know, that spirally type of look either. But I don't know, we could use something in here. Birds. I do have those eagles that I keep using in a scene like this, but I don't know, they seem to be very well suited for this type of composition, so maybe I'll use those ones again. And I think I've left enough space in here for them too, so let me grab those ones. Okay, if any scene could take a fairly large bird, it's this one, although I use this one on the quarter-size pieces as well, but on this one, I think this big, huge kind of eagle could make a nice statement in here. I guess it wouldn't be as large of a statement as it is on a quarter-page card where it's taken up more, you know, percentage, a higher percentage of the overall space. But let's see how it goes. I think I just kind of took a look in here. I think it would fit right in here. I don't want it to touch any of these other trees, I don't think. I mean, it could, but all right. I just need to be careful not to touch these trees that are still wet with my fingers. Okay. Kind of goes along with the spirit, you know, the wing directions, like, oops, like that. Kind of goes along with the spirit of that kind of swirly type of ink application that I did on the with the inks. Okay, let's see this one here. Let's put this one up here. I'll kind of keep them going in the direction of the piece. Okay. This eagle's a little pebbled, like this fisheye type of effect with that thicker ink. Oh, I know what it is. All those little dots are starting to kind of come through the eagle impressions. I don't know. That doesn't really bother me, but I one of the things I was considering was going over this and putting some more of that splatter painting on top, like it's I don't know. It's almost like it's snow or something like that. We can call it like Stardust or something like that too. Alright, let's see, I have these smaller birds as well. I can kind of put these in here. Kind of like they're kind of following up and kind of in the distance there, like that. Let's go ahead and do it. I was just going to do the pairing of them, but I thought, maybe let's go with these little ones too. Kind of like they're in a, I don't know what they call it, a vortex or something like that. I mean, in the sky maybe it would be a thermal or something. Alright, let me take a look at this here. Debating on whether or not for a little bit of extra texture over the top of these right here. I think I'm going to go for it. I don't know. It's my gut feeling. A little bit more of this bleed-proof white. I like the idea of kind of the Stardust kind of coming into the atmosphere and, you know, kind of being around these kind of encompassing our trees and figures here. Okay, that looks pretty good. Or it looks enough of that. Alright, let's see. Okay, now I've added all that kind of random application of paint there. Let me go on and add some kind of stars back into the background areas, or a little bit more of them. Okay. Let's add a couple of really large ones too. This is just a gel pen. kind of have to scribble it off on my paper because I'm rolling in some of the pigment ink that's on the surface of the paper, or the hybrid inks, one of the two. So you just have to roll it out. In other words, these are roller ball pens. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm adding these kind of variations on those dots, just in the form of some of these larger ones. It's such a gigantic piece here. I should draw some really big ones in here, maybe. Like something like that. I do that because this piece is so huge. It can take the larger forms like that in a couple spots. What I see this as kind of these stars, like kind of emanating outward, and some of them are just larger than others. So in terms of perspective, I'm just doing some kind of larger ones, maybe kind of a little bit more around the perimeter. Alright, now let me see if I can kind of illuminate some of these with a little bit of a glow. Okay, I just have a Q-tip here. I'm having to be careful here because these little dots that I just drew on here with the gel pen, those things can rub off really easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap in some white pigment ink around them. And I'm going to try not to remove them by tapping it on there, which is entirely possible too. And so instead of enhancing, it might be like eradicating, which is like the opposite of what I want to do. It's not like precarious or something like that, but I just have to be a little bit careful about it and kind of conscientious of how hard I tap this Q-tip. All right, too much ink on here. I need to really take off some. All right. And you just kind of tap right on top and kind of creates that little glowing little spear or ball. It just changes things from a kind of a textural standpoint. I'm starting to see this in some of your work out there, those little glowing little balls, and I think it looks great. Oops. Too much. Sometimes you have to really dab this off quite a bit. Okay. It doesn't get on real even, so sometimes I'm kind of twirling this as I'm doing it, tapping it and slowly kind of rotating it. Alright, this is a little bit darker. Let me change the exposure. Alright, let's take a look at this piece. Pretty crazy. Alright, here's some close-ups here. We'll see if the areas on here kind of work in terms of just, you know, one little space. And then we'll take a look at it overall. So you can see the this little textured marks on that bird where all those little stars are kind of poking through it a little bit. I don't know why it's doing it over there and not really... Oh, because I didn't put so much of that that Dr. Martin spray around the side. Remember, I kind of focused it in the middle here, so you can see it kind of poking through some of these areas on the birds. But then, you know, I just kind of incorporated it into the look, and I just gave everything a spray right over the top of it, so you get these little, you know, little dots over the top of it, so maybe that doesn't stand out so much from a textural standpoint. But I know this is it, kind of overall. That's a pretty big piece for me, but I don't know, the concepts and everything like that didn't, you know, play too big of a part as far as a change from your typical quarter size or half page scene. The one thing that it did allow me to do, though, is to do these more kind of real gestural, kind of swooshy applications of ink to give it this overall look. I don't think I would be doing it on a really small card. I wouldn't be thinking to do that type of thing just because of the smaller format, but I guess I could. But I do like the overall look of it, and that kind of that circular type of movement kind of running up there. And then it's been kind of reiterated a little bit with the birds here, the way, you know, I've positioned them kind of swooshing in like that, kind of going like this, like a funnel, you know, up into the sky or something like that. So hopefully the viewer's eye can kind of go around in this kind of circular motion right here. That's kind of the compositional framework of this piece. It's about the kind of the spiral type of movement. But anyways, the trees look pretty good in the Versafine. I'll have to see how they dry on top of these pigments, though. Like I said, sometimes before the colors from underneath kind of show through, but maybe that's where I've used a little bit more pigment ink. On here it didn't stick as well to the glossy, so I do like the glossy look, though. It looks pretty good. But I'll have to try it on the matte, too. The mattes papers have really been a lot of fun to work with. I'm trying to get so it's not so glary here, but okay. But anyways, hope you enjoyed the scene and watching it develop. We saw some really crazy kind of moments in it, and some really ugly periods as well, I think, you know, when I was kind of working on the background. But true to form with those hybrid inks, you can just kind of wipe it right back in, so you kind of work from light into the darker tones, and if it starts looking a little bit too murky in some areas, then you can go back with some of the brighter, you know, colors again, and then just kind of work it right over the top. So areas in here, like that red wasn't working in there at all. So, but it's just all part of the process, you know, so I put some of this blue on top, ran some of that pigment ink in there, and it's now, you know, I think that red looks really good. I didn't like it so red in this kind of whole vicinity. It kind of stood out a little bit too much, but now it's kind of fully incorporated, I think. All right, so anyways, Stardust something, or something Stardust. I'll think of a title for it at some point in time. Thanks for watching. Hope you like, share, and subscribe. Drop me a note with any comments or questions.